Dozens killed. The Russian army entered the Dnipropetrovsk region but was defeated. There will be no more missiles for air defense. The United States is stopping military aid to Ukraine. North Korea is sending 30,000 troops to Ukraine. Irrefutable evidence has emerged. Russia shot down an Azerbaijani passenger plane. Countries are on the brink of war. Macron spoke with Putin for 2 hours. There will be no end to the war. By not imposing sanctions, Trump is playing into Putin's hands. Russia is amassing billions for the war. Kit Kellogg accused Lukashenko of lying. Elon Musk got scared of deportation and started praising Trump again. Greetings. My name is Anastasia Dmitrovska, and right now here are the main stories. But first, give this video a like. If you support Ukraine, subscribe to our channel so we don't lose touch with you on YouTube. As for the front, the situation there is escalating. The Russians have indeed broken through into the Dnipropetrovsk region, or at least such videos have appeared online. In these videos, Russian occupiers allegedly show the first village captured in the Dnipropetrovsk region, Dakhne. However, it's important to note that this information has not been officially confirmed. And besides, we remember that Russians often resort to such fake videos about supposedly capturing settlements. In reality, as before, a small group of Russians breaks through specifically to create such video content in order to demoralize Ukrainians. In fact, our military has confirmed just such a raid.
There is no consolidation at war. Some run in, some run out. This is not the capture of territory or a settlement.
Our military is writing about the difficult situation in the Zaporizhia direction.
In the Zaporizhia direction, which everyone has probably long forgotten about and thinks everything is fine there, the enemy has renewed its activity in the area of Kamyansk and has made some advances.
And our defenders are also sharing this horrific video, which at the same time serves as further evidence of Russian war crimes. The Russians are simply executing a Ukrainian soldier. They tied the Ukrainian fighter to a motorcycle and dragged him along the road. However, things are not going well for the Russians themselves at the front either. A captured Russian soldier talks about heavy losses, saying that only 3 people remain from their company. He's referring to the offensive in the Dnipropetrovsk region.
In our company, there are only 3 of us left. Me, my brother, and 1 more. Well, the others died there.
We went in to carry out the mission on May 25th. The people ran out by about the 1st of June. I mean, the whole battalion. Only small groups remained scattered throughout the forest belt, some wounded, some refusing to go, and those who are afraid to move.
Meanwhile, the Russians have no intention of stopping. As Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal states, Russia wants to reach the borders of the Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, Sumy and Chernihiv regions. After that, the Russian dictator intends to put forward a proposal for Ukraine's capitulation. Shmyhal also added that if we stop fighting today, we will simply die. Despite all the difficulties and the enemy's numerical superiority, Ukrainian soldiers are heroically holding the front. They are fighting for what is theirs. Give them a like under this video to show your support and write a few kind words in the comments. I know they're watching us. North Korea plans to send up to 30,000 soldiers to the war in Ukraine. This was reported by CNN, citing Ukrainian intelligence. In fact, our intelligence says that in the coming months, between 25 and 30,000 North Korean soldiers could arrive in Russia, while the Russian Ministry of Defense is already preparing to provide the necessary equipment and weapons to integrate the Koreans into Russian combat units. It is also preliminarily known that North Korean soldiers will be involved in combat operations on territories of Ukraine occupied by Russia, and in particular in large-scale offensive operations. The United States has halted the supply of weapons to Ukraine, including the critically needed Patriot air defense missiles for the defense of Ukrainian cities. A number of Western media outlets reported this the day before. Here is the weaponry that Ukraine is currently not receiving from the United States. More than 100 Hellfire missiles, over 250 high-precision GMLRS rocket systems, dozens of Patriot interceptors, dozens of Stinger surface-to-air missiles, AIM air-to-air missiles, grenade launchers, and thousands of 155mm high-explosive howitzer shells. Some of these arms shipments are already even in Poland, but the US halted them right before they were to be handed over to Ukraine. It's interesting what prompted such a decision. Here's what they're saying in Washington. White House Representative Hannah Kelly says the decision was made to put U.S. interests first. But all of this looks like some kind of planned action against Ukraine, because once again, certain weapons had almost reached us, and they were simply stopped. At the moment, Ukraine has not officially commented on this information in any way, but it's worth adding that if this is really the case and the US does not resume deliveries of at least what has already been allocated to Ukraine, it will be a serious problem for us, both directly for the front lines and, in fact, for the rear as well. Do you also get the feeling that the interests being prioritized in Washington aren't those of the US, but rather someone else entirely? You'll never believe who called whom. For the first time since 2022, French President Emmanuel Macron spoke with Putin. It's unlikely that this call will restore the pre-war frequency of conversations between Macron and Putin, but one way or another, they're back in contact and spoke for 2 hours. As expected, they talked about Ukraine and also about Iran's nuclear program.
Regarding Ukraine, the President of the Republic emphasized France's unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He called for the swiftest possible establishment of a ceasefire and the start of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia for a lasting and durable resolution to the conflict.
As expected, Putin tried to convince Macron that it is Europe that is to blame for the war in Ukraine and that it is high time for the West to recognize the new territorial reality.
When discussing the situation around Ukraine, Vladimir Putin reminded that the Ukrainian conflict is a direct consequence of the policies of Western countries, which for many years ignored Russia's security interests, created an anti-Russian foothold in Ukraine, condoned violations of the rights of Russian-speaking residents, and are now pursuing a policy of prolonging hostilities by supplying the Kiev regime with various modern weapons.
Well, much to the Kremlin's great regret, Europe only recognizes the fact that Putin is a mad terrorist. And as for Macron, Putin's words didn't make any impression on him either. And after his phone conversation with Putin, the president of France called the president of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky.
According to the source, the conversation between Macron and Zelensky was constructive. The French president informed his Ukrainian counterpart about the details of his conversation with Putin.
Well, the fact that Putin doesn't want peace is nothing new. But it's still good that Macron realized this, and from his own experience and direct interaction with the Kremlin. And what do you think about this conversation? Let me know. Germany is considering the possibility of supplying Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine. However, there is still no final decision at this time. German Chancellor Friedrich Merkel says that the issue of supplying this type of weapon remains uncertain, as Ukrainian soldiers would need at least half a year to learn how to use the Taurus missiles.
The problem is that this system is extremely complex, and training soldiers takes at least half a year. So are they already being trained? We haven't agreed on that yet. I discussed this with Zelensky. I also discussed it within the coalition. We haven't started yet. It's still an option. But I said that we will no longer publicly discuss which weapons we are supplying to support Ukraine. Because I want Putin to have some uncertainty about our military actions.
In short, if Taurus missiles do end up in Ukraine, it probably won't happen anytime soon, and we likely won't find out about it right away.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
In Poland, Ukrainians were detained who were kidnapping migrants and extorting money from their families. In fact, Polish media report that the 4 detained Ukrainians are suspected of kidnapping migrants in Poland and Latvia. The outlet RMV24 also writes that the Ukrainians may be involved in the illegal transportation of migrants who were entering the EU through Belarus. It was one of the humanitarian organizations that reported the kidnapping of migrants to the police. The report stated that people were being held in Poland, kidnapped by a gang that was demanding ransom in cryptocurrency. The criminals threatened to kill the victims and sell their organs. Photographs of naked, bound men were attached to the report. It turned out that the criminals, threatening with weapons, took the men's money and phones and then transported them to Lublin in the trunk of a car. The family received demands for ransom payment. The kidnapped men managed to escape, and witnesses saw the naked men in the city and handed them over to the border guards. After that, the Ukrainians fled to Latvia, where they continued their activities. According to law enforcement, the suspects fled to Latvia, where they kidnapped 3 Malians. The men were tied up and locked in the trunk of a car. One of them was tied to a tree and brutally beaten with a wooden stick. A video of the torture was sent to his family along with a ransom demand. Later, the Polish police, in cooperation with their Latvian colleagues, detained the Ukrainians, and in the near future, they will be charged with kidnapping and illegal border crossing. Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. So, next we're talking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. More specifically, about how the lack of new sanctions from the United States allows Russia to replenish its military budget. Journalists from the New York Times write that since taking office, Trump has not only failed to impose new sanctions against Russia, but in some cases has even eased existing sanctions. As the journalists write, the White House, through its inaction, has effectively given Moscow the opportunity to accumulate the money and materials it needs for the war against Ukraine. As trade and corporate reports show, as a result, Russia has gained the opportunity to create new front companies, to channel funds and crucial components for the war with Ukraine, particularly computer chips and military equipment. And once again, the journalists of the publication analyzed trade reports, online listings, and corporate documents. And just listen to this. They found more than 130 companies in China and Hong Kong that advertised the sale of such components to Russia. And none of these companies are currently under sanctions. In short, Russia's military machine is now running at full capacity, in part thanks to Trump's easy hand. Although, to be fair, it should be noted that just recently Senator Lindsey Graham, who is one of the authors of the bill on new sanctions against Russia, said that Trump stated it was time to pass this bill.
This is a major breakthrough. So what does this bill do? If you buy goods from Russia and do not help Ukraine, there will be a 500% tariff on your goods entering the United States.
India and China buy 70% of Putin's oil. They are supporting his war machine. My bill has 84 co-sponsors. This allowed the president to impose tariffs on China, India, and other countries to force them to stop supporting Putin's war machine and bring him to the negotiating table. Yesterday, for the first time, the president asked me, "Did you play golf with him?" Yes, I played golf with him. He says, "It's time to act, to push your bill forward." There's a provision in the bill, Mr. President, you decide whether to apply it. But we will give President Trump a new tool. After the July recess, we will pass a bill that will allow the press, he will sign it. Yes, I think we're on the right track. All right, but he has a reservation. Yes, it's up to him to decide how to apply it. But we're trying to bring Putin to the negotiating table.
But again, it's important to understand that this is Trump, and his opinion changes very often. In short, everything can still change, but we definitely hope that the bill will be passed in the Senate already in July. And what do you think? Will Trump dare to hit the Kremlin with sanctions? As they say, there are three things you can watch forever: water flowing, fire burning, and how former close friends Musk and Trump exchange threats. Just recently, Musk criticized Trump's budget bill and even threatened to create his own party.
Every member of Congress who ran for office promising to cut government spending and then immediately voted for the largest increase in national debt in history should hang their head in shame.
Trump responded to Musk's criticism of the Republicans' budget bill in his usual style. He threatened Musk with deportation and being sent back home to South Africa.
When are you going to deport Elon Musk?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe we'll have to sick Dodi on Elon. You know, Dodi is a monster who might have to come back and eat Elon. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? He gets a lot of subsidies from Elon.
That probably made Elon think, and Musk, commenting on Trump's statement about a 60-day truce between Israel and Iran, praised the US president for resolving several serious conflicts. Interestingly, this praise from Musk came after Trump threatened to send him home. What do you think? Will Musk be praising Trump more or criticizing him in the near future? American journalists from the Financial Times have found out who is behind the explosions of tankers that were going to Russia. A series of mysterious explosions on oil tankers has caused concern in the world of maritime shipping. Observers suggest that these attacks may be part of a state-sponsored sabotage campaign. In fact, since the beginning of the year, 5 such vessels have already been attacked. And at first, suspicion fell on Ukraine. All of these vessels had called at Russian ports a few weeks before the attacks, which led some security experts to suspect Ukrainian involvement. Official Kyiv did not comment, but Ukrainian special services have repeatedly carried out covert operations against Russian interests. However, during the latest attack, the explosion occurred in the hull's bottom, not on the side as it had before. As a result, there is now reason to consider other theories about possible saboteurs. There are other possible options, including Libyan participants or states that have both the technical capabilities and the potential motive, he said. And what do you think? Whose handiwork are these attacks? We barely had time to process the visit of the US President's special representative for Ukraine, Kit Kellogg, to Belarus, where he met with Lukashenko.
What kind of people we have?
Just look at how Lukashenko started spilling details about his conversation with Kellogg. Although, judging by the context, these are more likely the fevered fantasies of the Belarusian president. But let's get down to business. Lukashenko, in all seriousness, claims that it wasn't just anyone, but Kellogg himself who practically swore to convince Ukraine not to strike Russia.
Lukashenko stated that he conveyed Russia's position on the Ukrainian settlement to the United States during negotiations with the special envoy of the US President, Kit Kellogg. According to him, the US representative promised to work to ensure that Kyiv would not strike Russia.
It seems Lukashenko is having another flare-up, and what's most interesting is that he made this statement after the Ukrainian attack on the Votkinsk military facility in Russia's Udmurtia. Let me remind you, that's 1,300 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Well, you have to admit, such loud statements from Lukashenko seem strange, because it's a lie, as Kellogg himself has already pointed out.
This quote is taken out of context. In my conversation with Lukashenko, we discussed a complete and unconditional ceasefire. Any restrictions on Kyiv's actions were conditioned by corresponding actions from Moscow. I have never made any comments about Ukraine continuing the war beyond the framework of a complete ceasefire.
But that's not all. And here you'd better sit down. We've already heard from Lukashenko in particular about the deployment of nuclear weapons in Belarus. Well, according to Lukashenko, it won't stop at nuclear weapons, because by the end of the year, Putin's Oreshnik will also be stationed in Belarus. In short, their imagination is running wild. But still, we're waiting for comments from Putin as well.
In Volgograd, we agreed with our big brother Kyor, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, that the first Oreshnik positions would be in Belarus. You've seen how the Oreshnik works. These are the same missiles, the same strikes, only without nuclear weapons, without radioactive contamination of the territory and air. By the end of the year, we should have 10 more hazelnut positions. Alexander Lukashenko, this weapon will be deployed in Belarus. Then no one will have to be afraid that Belarusians possessing nuclear weapons are ready to launch a strike. Naturally, the strike will not be carried out with nuclear weapons.
Anna, and what about you? Do you believe everything Lukashenko said? There are no Tauruses yet, but drones will be. Germany will finance the production of 500 long-range drones for Ukraine. The publication Welt reports that these are drones capable of striking targets at a distance of 1,200 kilometers, and the financing agreement has already been signed.
Announcer. The German Ministry of Defense confirmed to the portal's inquiry that Berlin has taken on the financing of long-range weapon production in Ukraine, but did not disclose details regarding the type of weapon, timelines, or the amount of funding. The ministry noted that this support will make it possible to quickly provide the attacked country with weapon systems that the Ukrainian army has already mastered.
Anna. And I'd also like to add a few words about the Liu-Chi type drones. Western experts in particular are convinced